Today, I'm going to show you how to do this in about 20 minutes. That's coming up. Hello everyone, my name is Daniel Reese. This is Weaver Leather Supply. Today, we're going to be talking about a technique that I adapted to leathercraft about a year ago, something like that. Now, this is not a new technique. This has been used in other mediums for quite a while now, but I've never seen anybody actually use it with leather. So today, that's what we're going to be talking about. So what is it and how does it work? Well, what it is, it's a graphics transfer, and that's just a big fancy way of saying transferring an image from paper to leather. So now that we know what it is, how does it actually work? Well, the first thing that you're going to need is a printer. You can use a laser printer or an inkjet. Either one of those is going to work perfectly fine. I'm going to be using an inkjet printer today. Now, the difference between the two, a laser printer is going to give you a lot more crisp, vibrant image. Even with the transfer, it's going to be a lot more crisp and vibrant, where the inkjet's going to have a little bit more of a vintage look when you're done. Now, if you really want that crisp, vibrant look and you don't have a laser printer, most copy stores have one and you can just have them print it for you. So one thing to keep in mind before you print it out, if you have something that needs to face a particular direction, like let's say it's got words in it and you need it to read from left to right, well, you're going to want to mirror that image. In other words, you're going to want to flip it horizontally before you print it. Otherwise, what's going to happen is when you transfer that image, your lettering or whatever it is that you needed to be one direction is going to be the other direction, and it's not going to work. You're going to have to start all over. So if it's important to face one direction, just mirror the image before you print it. Today, we're going to be using this image right here of this cute little pup as our graphics transfer. Now, let's say we have a scenario where grandma has a pup that she just adores, and you want to be able to give her something with that specific pup on the project. Well, this is going to be a great way to do that. It can be used for all kinds of other things too, like repeating patterns or textures or whatever you're looking for. If you can print it, pretty much you can do a graphics transfer with this technique. But today, we're going to use this little guy. Once we've got it cut out, we're going to apply a generous coat to both the image and the leather of Mod Podge. Now, you can get this stuff anywhere. It's at most craft stores. It's essentially glue, but we're going to apply that to the leather. Then we're going to apply it to the image. Then we're going to apply another coat to the leather. So once we've got the Mod Podge on the leather and on the paper, we can go ahead and put them together. But we want to be really careful when we do. This is one of those areas that we can mess things up. The reason it's so easy to mess up is that paper is essentially soggy, so it tears really easily. So we want to lay it down, creating the least bubbles or wrinkles that we can. Then we're going to go in and gently massage out any bubbles or wrinkles that we may have, introduced into the project. Once we've got it nice and smooth, we can go back with a dry paper towel and really start working it in so that there's really good contact between that paper and the leather. But again, you want to be super, super careful at this point because that paper is going to tear really easily. So it's a really gentle touch with very little friction. So once we've got good adhesion between the paper and the leather, we don't have any wrinkles or bubbles in it, we can set it aside and let it dry. Now, this is one of those areas that I tend to not be very patient. So, I'm going to hit it with a hairdryer or a heat gun, one of the two, just to speed up that process. So once you can run your hand over the top of it and you can tell that both the paper and the glue are dry, we can go ahead and start removing the paper. Our goal here is to leave the image behind while removing the paper. So how are we actually going to do that? Well, we can grab a sponge or a paper towel. Either one of them, we want it to be lightly damp. I really like a paper towel because it's smooth. It slides across the paper really easily without tearing it. Then we're just going to lightly dab at the area that you want to work on. It's important that the paper be barely wet. We want it almost dry. Then we want to start lightly rubbing at it with the pad of our finger. Our goal here is to get the paper to start lifting and rolling up. Once you've got that, we can start rolling it in one direction. You just create a little bit of an edge and it'll start to slowly roll off and lift off the leather. So while I'm doing that, there's a couple of things that I want to mention. And the first one is that as we're trying to lift that top layer of paper off, that first layer, rolling it seems to be the easiest. You'll find that it starts to naturally want to roll on its own. Just work with that and let it roll the direction that it wants to. And that's going to be the easiest way I found to get that top layer to come off without damaging the image below it. The other thing that I want to mention is that this process, while it's super simple, really requires a lot of patience. This is one of those things that if you don't let the paper kind of come off at the rate it wants to come off and you try to force it or you try to hurry it, you're going to damage that image that we want to keep intact. So it's really important that you not get impatient. And really, if you feel like it's going too slow and you feel this frustration wanting to move faster, you're probably at the right speed. So that step that we just went through where we removed the paper from the project, that's going to be something that we have to repeat several times. But one of the things we want to keep in mind is that we're trying to control the moisture content in the leather and on the image. So every time we start that paper removal process over, we want to start back with the hair dryer, the heat gun, or whatever drying process you have. We want to bring that moisture level all the way back to 0. That way we know exactly how much moisture is in there. It gives us the least chance of damaging the image and the project. So always come back to that drying process before you start the next process of removing paper. As you get to the end of the paper removal process, this is going to be one of those things where it's kind of a balancing act. If you take too much off, you're going to be lifting paper, you're going to be lifting color out of the image, and it's going to get kind of splotchy. If you don't take enough, then you're going to have a texture that you can't get out of the image in the end. So once you've got it to a point where you're happy with it, you've gotten off as much as you can without actually damaging the image that we're trying to, to preserve, go ahead and set it aside and let it dry. Just know at the end of that drying process, it's very common for it to have a little bit of a haze over the top of it. That's from the paper. There's always a little bit of paper left, but we're going to fix that in the next step, because what we're going to do is we're going to take a high gloss aerosol spray. I've used Leather Sheen. I've used stuff from the big box stores, and we're going to put a light coat over the top of it. When that high gloss sealer hits the project, that haze should disappear. In fact, we've got a side-by-side here where it was the before the sealer and then one after the sealer. So at this point, after you've sprayed it with the high gloss sealer, your project may have a little bit of a texture to it that you don't really care for, and that's that paper that got left behind. Now, the way we're going to fix that is we're going to take one of these foam sanding blocks. This doesn't have much grit to it at all. It's essentially smooth with a little bit of texture to it, and we're going to lightly sand over the top of the project. That's going to lift off all that texture that we don't want there. It's going to give us a nice, smooth, finished, kind of vintage look to it. So once we've gone through and we've sanded over the project and we've lifted all that texture off of it, we can finally get to the last step in the process. And that is we're going to be going over it with this high gloss finish from Angelus. Now you can use whichever one you like. I really like this one. It goes on nice and smooth, no bubbles, and you get a nice glossy finish to it. Now what that's going to do is that's going to ensure that we don't have that haze coming back up. That's going to do it for this video. I will see you in the next one. In the meantime, go make something amazing.